Welcome to the Connect with BMC Helix ITSM webinar series. During today's event, you're able to ask questions of our panelists. The question and answers, along with today's broadcast, will be published to our YouTube channel. Today's topic is RSSO TrueSight Integration Best Practices, and Vishakha will take us through this content. Over to you, Vishakha.
Thank you, Greg. My name is Vishakha Thalpati. I'm Staff Technical Support Analyst at BMC Software. In this webinar, we are going to take a look at Remedy Single Sign-On and TrueSight product installation and integration techniques. In our agenda today, we will go through an overview of Remedy Single Sign-On and TrueSight installations and configurations, as well as some highlights of integration between Remedy Single Sign-On and TrueSight products. We'll then take a look at few troubleshooting techniques, and we'll also provide you with some useful references to be followed upon. Remedy Single Sign-On is an authentication system for multiple applications such as Remedy ITSM, different TrueSight products, etc. User provides credentials one time and then can access other applications without being prompted to enter the credentials again. Remedy Single Sign-On can be installed in different ways, like the traditional way of doing it using installation wizard, another way is using silent install method or the manual installation. Irrespective of which method you are going to use, you need to make sure that you have required access and permissions to run the installer and the user permissions for Remedy Single Sign-On database on all servers where you will install the Remedy SSO. You need to make sure that prior to RSSO installation, you should install Java and Tomcat on all the servers wherever you are going to run the installer. Earlier, TrueSight embedded Remedy Single Sign-On installer was shipped with bundled Java and Tomcat. However, regular or external Remedy SSO installer does not ship Java or Tomcat. Remedy Single Sign-On can be installed in standalone setup or high availability setup. In order to run the Remedy Single Sign-On installer in HA setup, please ensure that Remedy Single Sign-On should be installed successfully on the primary node. You should have database settings same as the settings used by the primary node. The database username and password must be same as on the primary node. In order to run the installer on the secondary node, while giving the database credentials or details about DB, you should select the option Use Existing User. In order to run Remedy Single Sign-On silently, you need to first create an options.txt file. Then you can run the installer silently. RSSO application needs to have its own database to function. Some of the tables in this database will hold data for authentications such as SAML, LDAP, AR server, as well as tables for user sessions and local internal users. In order to run RSSO installer manually, you need to make sure that you have Remedy Single Sign-On database created prior to running the installation script. TrueSight Presentation Server hosts the web-based TrueSight console functions and consumes data from various TrueSight products to provide consolidated set of views for monitoring the infrastructure and real and synthetic applications and capacity planning. In addition to data presentation, the presentation server performs functions such as role-based access control and data management functions such as storage and persistence. TrueSight Infrastructure Management brings together enterprise class monitoring, event management, etc. Since Adobe Flash has sunset already, the TrueSight Infrastructure Management Operator Console is no longer supported. The TrueSight Console, a component of TrueSight Presentation Server, is the replacement for the Operator Console. Next comes is TrueSight Capacity Optimization. is a capacity management solution that gives you the insight to optimize the use of the IT resources that you already have and to plan for new ones. It collects and analyzes the capacity data and core metrics for CPU, memory, etc., and provides the recommendations for optimizing them. With TrueSight Capacity Optimization, you can model future resource needs and predict what IT resources you will be needing. Now we will quickly go through a demo of RSSO Admin Console, navigation and configurations. You can access your Remedy Single Sign-On Admin Console using this URL, where you can put your Remedy Single Sign-On fully qualified domain name :port/RSSO. Default admin user is admin, and the default password is RSSO hash admin hash. At any point of time, you can change this admin user password. Once you land into RSSO admin console, you can see different fields. Cookie domain is one of the important fields of Remedy Single Sign-On, which controls the cookie visibility between servers within the same domain or different domains. This cookie domain must contain dot in between. Ensure that this cookie domain is correct. Otherwise, you may face different authentication issues and the user may go into redirection loop. You can also see different session parameters, as those are self-explanatory. One of the important parameters is max session time. By default, it is set to 24 hours. You can also change this timing. Once this value is selected, the timing constraints are automatically enforced. In Advanced tab, you can see different parameters such as cookie name. Again, the cookie name is the timestamp when your Remedy Single Sign-On database is installed. Service URL is your Remedy Single Sign-On server URL. If you're working in standalone server setup, you can put your Remedy Single Sign-On individual server URL. If you're working in high availability setup, then this should be your Remedy Single Sign-On load balancer URL. This URL provides you the information about the location of the Remedy SSO server, and RSSO uses this service URL to generate the session cookie. Here you can also have logging field. Depending upon the need of the time, you can set the different logging levels. If you're troubleshooting any issues, you can keep it to debug. Otherwise, you can keep it to error or info. Here you have self-help. If you enable this checkbox, then you will see the flyout for self-help. At any point of time during RSSO admin console configurations, if you face any issues, difficulties, you can always refer to self-help. Next part is realm configurations. Each realm should have unique name. Realm name can contain few special characters such as star, underscore, dot. You need to make sure that realms are not repeating the name. Realm ID stored in RSSO DB is case insensitive. While configuring realms, you can configure authentications, you can configure brandings. In authentication, you can have different authentication types. For example, you can configure SAML, AR, Kerberos, etc. You can have authentication chaining. Like this. In General tab, you have another important parameter, which is application domain. Application domains are comma-separated domain names of the applications which are integrated with Remedy SSO. Each value in application domain is a host of application URL of the tenant. Application domain field does not accept uppercase. Let me try. Even if you try to put uppercase values, it will automatically change it to lowercase. You can configure application domains for different applications depending upon the need or the requirement. There are different tabs like local user tab. Here you can select different realms and you will see the local users created by your RSSO admin. In groups, you can have different groups created in RSSO. You need to make sure or you need to understand that RSSO admin console does not show you LDAP users or LDAP groups in here. You have session tab where you will see the sessions listed for different users who are already logged in. Then you have launchpad configurations. You can create different admin users. In the RSSO 2002, you have audit functionality. You can always enable audit from enabling audit option here. RSSO also supports multi-tenancy. So here you can create different tenants. If you are working with multiple customers using same RSSO server setup, you can always configure those different customers using different tenants. Now we'll again go back to the next slide. Let's take a quick look at TrueSight Presentation Server installation highlights. TrueSight Presentation Server can be installed using typical way of installing using the default settings, or you can customize these settings using custom mode. One important point is you need to make sure that you have Remedy Single Sign-On Server installed and configured prior to running the TSPS installer. As shown in the screenshot here, this is the point where your TrueSight Presentation Server will be integrated with Remedy Single Sign-On. Installer will ask you to provide details about your Remedy Single Sign-On server. You can add all the details like Remedy Single Sign-On server, FQTN, then port which you are using for your Remedy Single Sign-On, admin password. Here you also have facility to import your Remedy Single Sign-On server certificate if at all Remedy Single Sign-On is running on SSL. TrueSight Presentation Server supports integration to different products. User management and multi-tenancy support is enabled through integrated authentication system, which is Remedy Single Sign-On. Whenever you have Remedy Single Sign-On integrated with TrueSight Presentation Server, you must check and apply the relevant patches and hotfixes as and when those are released by BMC. Prior to installing any patch or hotfix, you need to make sure that you have Remedy Single Sign-On and TrueSight Presentation Server required backups in place. Coming to next component, which is TrueSight Infrastructure Management Server. You can install TrueSight Infrastructure Management Server with Oracle or SAP SQL anywhere. You need to make sure that you complete TSIM server installation, which provides an integrated platform for service availability and performance management of your IT environment. Once your TSIM is installed successfully, you need to do the post-installation task as shown in the screen here. You can register this TSIM component with your TrueSight Presentation Server. Another important component is TrueSight Capacity Optimization. You can install TrueSight Capacity Optimization using Installation Wizard, or you can use Silent Installer. You need to make sure that you have Remedy Single Sign-On and Presentation Server installed prior to running the TrueSight Capacity Optimization installer. As shown in the screenshot here, you can configure your Capacity Optimization Server with TrueSight Presentation Server, which is the integration point between your presentation server and capacity. Another important point is TrueSight Capacity Optimization Server and Presentation Server should be integrated to same remedy single sign-on server. During the capacity optimization installation, you will be asked to provide remedy single sign-on server details. The server details should be same as you have provided in presentation server installation. After you complete installing TrueSight Operations Management components, you can extend the product capabilities by integrating it with other BMC products. You must register the components in Presentation Server by adding them in TrueSight Console. Let's take a quick look at integrating TrueSight Presentation Server with Remedy Single Sign-On. Remedy Single Sign-On is an authentication system that enables your users to enter the credentials. A user gets authenticated in a multi-software environment. Upon authenticating, users automatically gain access to all applications that are integrated with Remedy SSO. In TrueSight Presentation Server, Remedy SSO supports following authentication types such as local user authentication, LDAP, SAML, Kerberos, etc. Based on your organization's requirements, you can configure any of the authentication types to authenticate the users for TrueSight product components. In order to have these authentications in place, you need to make sure that the RSSO is installed and configured. Create the required tenants as in realms, user groups, and users in Remedy Single Sign-On admin console. You can also configure an existing Remedy SSO that is integrated with other BMC products to work with Presentation Server. You have another feature that is multi-tenancy in TSPS. In order to have multi-tenant TrueSight Presentation Server configurations, you can update RSSO agent properties file, which is located on your TSPS server. You need to set this MSP deployment flag as true. As shown in the screenshot here, these are the details of Remedy Single Sign-On Server, which are existing in your TrueSight Presentation Server console. At any point of time, if you would like to change any details like port number or password for your admin user, you can edit those details as shown in the screenshot. Let's have a quick demo of Remedy Single Sign-On and TrueSight Presentation Server integration highlights. Let us log into TrueSight Presentation Server admin console. Your presentation server admin user is admin and default password is admin12345. In the meantime, I will also log into Remedy Single Sign-On admin console. As we know, RSSO admin user is admin and default password is RSSO hash admin hash. Once you log into TrueSight Presentation Server, you can navigate to Administration. There you will see Remedy SSO. Here you can configure your Remedy SSO with TrueSight Presentation Server. In this portion here, you can see the details of your Remedy Single Sign-On Server, which you had provided during Presentation Server installation. At any point of time, you would like to do any changes to these details, you can always change them. For example, if I would like to update my admin user password here, I can do test connection. Once it validates the connection successfully, you can save the change. You can also click on user accounts to see all the tenants which are available in your Remedy SSO admin console. For example, star, and you will see respective user groups and users. listed under those tenants. For example, for capacity group, if we have any users, those can be listed here. If you go to some other group, for example, operators, then you can see different users listed in there. Once you go to Remedy Single Sign-On Admin Console, here are the realms. As we showed previously, you can configure different realms and application domains to work with integrated applications. You can also have different authentication mechanisms configuring the authentication. You can have local user, LDAP, etc. In local, in local user, you can select the respective tenant and you will get to see the users which we saw in the TrueSight admin console. It depends upon which tenant you are selecting. It will show you the respective user groups and users. You can also change any local user password from here. For example, I would like to change this user's password. I can change the password. Yes. Password changed successfully. Let's try to log in with this user. So accordingly, you can change any local user's password using Remedy Single Sign-On Admin Console. There are another few important points. On TrueSight Presentation Server, you can run following command: tssh properties list, which will list you all the properties inside this file. Mainly, you can look at the RSSO server details, port, and admin user details. BMC SSO.server name, SSO type, admin. You can also update this file in order to do if there are any changes required. Another file is RSSO agent properties file. You can navigate to your TrueSight Presentation Server installation directory. It is located in Tomcat, Web Apps, Root, WebINF, Classes. This is the important file which will again give you an idea about what all parameters are being used in order to have your TrueSight and Remedy Single Sign-On integration working. As you see here, SSO external URL and SSO service URLs are the URLs which are coming from your Remedy Single Sign-On server. Depending upon whether you are using standalone RSSO or high availability RSSO server setup, you can change these URLs. Since I'm using single server configuration, I have the same URL in both places. You can also have multi-tenancy settings here. If you uncomment this flag, MSC deployment true and MSP always show domain entry page to true, then during TSPS, during presentation server login, it will ask you which tenant you would like to log in for, and the user will be authenticated accordingly. These are a few highlights and important points of your TrueSight Presentation Server and Remedy Single Sign-On integration techniques. Let's move on to next slide. Enabling multi-domain support for Remedy Single Sign-On, we have introduced starting from Remedy Single Sign-On version 1902 or later. You can have Remedy Single Sign-On integrated with applications which are hosted on different domain than your Remedy Single Sign-On server domain. You can also have your presentation server or TSIM server in some other domain than RSSO. You need to make sure that you install the latest cumulative hotfixes for Remedy SSO, and then you can proceed with multi-domain support configurations. As shown in the screenshot, in order to have multi-domain activated on your TrueSight server, you need to do few changes in RSSO agent.properties file. Here are the summary of steps which you need to follow upon while configuring multi-domain support. You need to first configure OAuth in Remedy Single Sign-On Admin Console, where you can register the client. In this case, the client can be any client name which is unique, inside which you can provide details for your TrueSight Presentation Server or TSIM server URLs. You need to configure OAuth client, then you can update the same client ID and secret on your RSSO agent. Once client ID and secret is updated, you can download generate cookie.zip file from TrueSight presentation documentation. Then you can run the command as shown in step number 4, depending upon what client ID you have received as per step number 1. Once this command is executed, you will get some custom cookie generated. That cookie you need to update it in RSSO admin console. Once the cookie is updated in RSSO admin console, you can quickly verify the jars listed here on your presentation server as well as on TSIM server inside WebINF lib folder. Just need to verify whether the jars are existing. If those are not existing or any one of them are missing, you can copy them from your RSSO installer, giving appropriate permissions. Let's quickly demonstrate how to configure multi-domain support for TrueSight Presentation Server. So log into Remedy Single Sign-On Admin Console. Once you log in there, you can navigate to OAuth tab. So first thing you need to do is register a client. In clients, you can click on register client, specify client name, for example, test underscore TSPS. Then select the checkbox to enable the client for authorization. You need to add redirect URIs. Redirect URI is the URI where the code is sent after an authorized request succeeds. This must be properly handled on the client side. When adding multiple URIs here, you need to make sure that each URI does not exceed 2000 characters. So now, in order to have the RSSO agent configured as OAuth2 client, you need to add the redirect URI pattern as like this. The pattern is this. So for my server, it is HTTP application domain is my TrueSight server name underscore RSSO. Since I'm using 443, it is not mandatory to mention the port. Then underscore RSSO-oAuth callback. So I can copy this redirect URI. I'll add the redirect URI. Make sure that you do not have any trailing spaces. To enable the OAuth client to use the OpenID Connect protocol, select the checkbox OpenID scope. You must enable this setting to authenticate users who are using applications hosted on different domains that uses same Remedy SSO server. If you have OpenID scope for OAuth client enable, you must also configure the user session timeout value, configuring the access token timeout. to specify the timeout value for the ID token and access. One important thing is once you click on save, in order to complete the client registration, you will be received client ID and secret. That values you need to copy appropriately because you are going to update the same values on your agent file. Save. So here I can copy client ID. Then I can copy client secret. Okay, then I will go to back to list. So my client is registered successfully. Like I said, access token is very important. Here, if you go to tokens, if you go to settings, here you can set access token and refresh token timeouts. Access token sets the timeout for the access token. After expiration, the issued access token is no longer valid. Refresh token sets the timeout to refresh the token. After expiration, the issued access token is no longer valid. To avoid security issues, access token must be of short duration. Refresh token typically have the longer duration. So by default, refresh token is like this and access token is having this value. You can change it anytime. Next is OpenID issuer URL. You need to put your remedy single sign-on URL here. OpenID issuer URL is the URL that matches with your SSO external URL, which you have configured in RSSO agent properties file. So in this case, my remedy single sign-on URL is, I can copy the URL here, update the change. Once you are done with that, to support multiple domain configurations, your RSSO server is used as OAuth server and agent is used as OAuth client. Hence, you need to generate the JSON web key, that is JWK. So if you go to OpenID tab, you need to click on generate. The generated JWK is used by the Remedy SSO server to authenticate applications hosted on different domains. So these are the settings which we have done in order to register the starting from registering the client, which is test TSPS. Inside that, we have given our TrueSight server URL. Then you have generated JWK, and then you have the OpenID issuer URL, which is your remedy single sign-on URL. One important thing which you need to make sure that the realm which you are going to use for your presentation server, you should add the application domain as your server's FQDN name. In this case, this is tsps.com. Save the change. So now we are done with RSSO side configurations. Let us move on to next step where we need to do few configurations on agent side. To start with, let's navigate to RSSO agent properties file. You can navigate to TrueSight server installation directory, TrueSight P server, modules, Tomcat, web apps, root, WebInf classes. You can take a backup of your RSSO agent.properties file before you do any changes. Then edit the file. Here are the parameters which we have already spoken about. So you can uncomment them enable multi-domain support, enable OAuth client ID, enable OAuth client secret. So let's fill in the values. First is your client ID. Next comes is your client secret. Just be sure that you don't have any spaces. Okay, once you're done with this, you can save the file. Coming to next step, we need to download generateCookies.com file from presentation server documentation site. I can show you quickly. You need to access TrueSight Presentation Server documentation site, enabling multi-domain support for presentation server. As you see here, you have option to download generate cookies name.zip file. And this is the command which we are going to run now from TrueSight installation directory JRE bin. So let's prepare the command. So this is the command java-jar generate cookie.name OAuth client ID. So I'll replace OAuth client ID with actual client ID. Let's go to command prompt. Navigate to JRE. So in this case, so you also need to make sure that you already have generate cookie.name file extracted here in the same path. So let's navigate to once you are in the path, you can copy the command to be executed. This is the new custom cookie which is generated. You can copy this cookie and replace RSSO server cookie in RSSO admin console. Navigate to General tab, Advanced. This is the original cookie name. This is the timestamp when your RSSO server database was installed. You can even have this value as a backup copied somewhere if in case you face any issues and you would like to revert to this. Now I will replace this with our new custom cookie. Save the change. The next part comes is you can navigate to web-inf lib directory where all the agent side jars are listed. You can quickly take a look if all jars are existing, and you can also verify the permissions. For example, on this particular machine, I'm using this user. So you can have full access. For any other jar also, you can verify the permissions. If in case you face any further issues, then you can keep on adding those permissions. As of now, it is not required. So I'm just leaving it like that. So now you can restart your TrueSight presentation server. Let's navigate back to bin directory. Okay, let's stop the server. You can quickly verify what is the server status now. And now you can start the service again. It may take few more seconds to boot completely. Okay, let's try to see if we can log into TrueSight console. One thing you can verify is you can go to OAuth and then go to tokens. So currently there are no tokens. If user authenticates successfully using OAuth, you will see the token generated here. So I'll go to new incognito window. I'll try to log in here. So it seems like my server is still not up. Okay, let's try again. So here you see the login page. You can log in with your user ID and password. So this is the way to configure your TrueSight, which is hosted on different domain than your RSSO. You can configure OAuth. Here in RSSO, you can see the token must be generated. See. Similarly, you can follow the steps for TSIM server. For TSIM server, you don't need to generate the different cookie or different client you need not to register. You can add the TSIM server URL in the same client. While working with Remedy Single Sign-On and TrueSight product integration, if you face any issues, you can refer this BMC troubleshooting guides, which we have hosted on BMC doc site, which you can visit at docs.bmc.com. You may come across few common issues during this kind of integration. One of them could be paging for filter users. While assigning a local user group to a local user in Remedy RSSO admin console, the user list may not be populated appropriately. This issue wasn't fixed in earlier versions due to some design limitation from the UI side, which is now fixed as a part of RSSO 2002 cumulative hotfix. Another common issue could be changing the local user password in RSSO admin console. You may not see any errors, but it will keep on spinning. This is another defect which has been fixed as a part of RSSO 2002 cumulative hotfix. The most recent and common issue which we have seen is unauthorized client while working with RSSO multi-domain configurations while integrating with TrueSight products. The cause could be incorrect redirect URI in RSSO admin console or incorrect client ID and secret in RSSO agent properties file. In order to rectify this issue, you need to verify the correct redirect URI which you have entered in client registration in RSSO admin console. You need to also match the client ID and secret which you have in RSSO admin console and in RSSO agent properties file on the TrueSight server. You can also face few issues during LDAP authentication while logging to TrueSight console. The main or the most common cause which we have seen is LDAP server certificate issue. Either the certificates are missing, certificates are invalid, or those are expired. So you need to make sure that on RSSO server you have the correct and valid LDAP server certificate imported in RSSO Tomcat key store as well as in Tomcat Java CA certs. We have also listed few useful references which you can follow up on after this webinar. In today's webinar, we have gone through Remedy single sign-on installation techniques along with TrueSight product installation highlights. Then we have discussed Remedy single sign-on and TrueSight product integration and configurations for multi-domain support. Then we have discussed few troubleshooting techniques along with common issues. This concludes our webinar for today. Now I will hand it back to Greg.
Thank you. And now I'll take us through the self-help in contacting BMC. The YouTube channel where this webinar will be posted is listed here. It contains past webinars as well as a rich set of how-to videos. The Connect with BMC Helix ITSM and Remedy webinar schedule is available at this community's link, and the Hot Off the Press newsletter for trending information is available at this community's post. As always, contacting technical support via web, phone, email, and these social channels is available. At this time, that will conclude this webinar. Thank you for attending.